Approaching 26 minutes to 11 o'clock. This is eNCA. I'm Dan Moyane. Well, in the last 20 or so minutes, I've been joined by the Police Minister, Bheki Cele, Ella Mangisa from Ilitha Labantu, and Bafana Khumalo from Sonke Gender Justice. As here on eNCA in this hour, we are focusing on this epidemic that is so painful and visible for all of us to see, and it looks like there's a resurgence, especially during the lockdown, as we've seen, and that's a gender-based violence disease that's afflicting our women. Now, Minister, as we were going into the break just before that, you were mentioning the point that all women who've suffered, who've been victims and survivors of this violence, their names need to be known. But you find that activists tend to focus on one or two names. Ella, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think it boils down to the reported matters. Some of the matters we are aware of, some of them we are not aware of. But I think once families bring these cases to the forefront and they are reported, all cases should be treated the same. I believe we treat all cases the same. Looking at, for instance, the case of Smolseni Gabata, nobody knew about this case until we raised the alarm to say, don't just focus on one particular province, but this is what's also happening in Cape Town. So until that information is brought to the fore, and even the community itself is rallying behind and supporting the family, thus these cases are coming out, because there's a lot that is actually happening. Yesterday, there was another case in Kailicha of a young woman who was murdered. She went missing, and her body was found in her house, buried under her bed. I'm sure the minister has already heard about it. But these are cases that community members are also making them known. So we take them up as organizations to ensure that justice is also served for those particular women.
Now, Bafana, you made a point earlier when you were talking about the importance of men taking action. Recently, when we were talking about GBV, somebody said, let's not forget the boy child. How is your organization addressing that?
Well, as I mentioned, the importance of prevention, Braden, we focus a lot of our programs with young men, and I'm happy to say that our colleagues, Ilitha Labantu, also have similar interventions where we go to schools, working with organizations like Soul City, creating clubs where we make boys aware about gender equality, its importance, the need that they should respect themselves and respect their sisters, and dealing with issues of bullying and all of that. It's not nearly enough, because at the moment a lot of this work is done by civil society organizations, many of whom are struggling to keep their doors open. We would love to have a moment where, through the National Strategic Plan, all our schools will have these programs. We will have programs with out-of-school young men, so that indeed there are continuous interventions that are building a different social norm about what it means to be a man. Now, on your question about why setting up the minister's call, I just wanted to make this point. The media must come to the party as well, because when these cases are reported, it seems the media chooses certain stories and not others. My organization, for instance, we wrote a presser about 3 days ago on two women, Pindangene and Tsehufatso. But of course, when people pick up the story, the major focus is on Tsehufatso and not Pindangene. Now, these are some of the contributions that we think as media, we need to find ways of telling the whole story in terms of who is affected by gender-based violence, so that we don't create an impression that some are more important than others.
Yeah, no, I take your point there. I think it's a very valid point. We in the media have a role to play as well. We are, after all, members of society. Minister, what are you doing in your department? What are the police services doing in order of empowering men, policemen? Because you've had incidents as well in the police force where a police officer would have shot and killed a policewoman officer, for example, in the past.
Yeah, then we are trying within the organization, because that's another thing. I hope beyond this, we will be talking with Mangisa, Bafana, and all of us, because other areas that we need to look at is inside our own organization, how our own members are behaving. We have tried to create, and we do have the main wing in the South African police that is led by two pastors. But last year and early this year, we tried to have a march, the male police march, to raise the awareness, to say while all police are working with women to protect and to react to them, but internally we have a structure, then we have the names of those members of the South African police who are males who are abusing women, because there will be also an abuse internally. There will be also the thinking to say the women members belong to the male members. Asking, for instance, if they are both in the night duty and people begin to ask things, knowing very well you left your wife home, she left the husband home, but you want just to take advantage because you are in the one shift. So we have mechanism that we try to deal with those things. They report, and then we act, and we try to act decisively against those members.
Okay, we are heading towards ending our discussion that we started just after 10 o'clock. And thank you very much, Minister, and Ella Mangisa and Bafana Khumalo for having been with me since the start. As we head to the close, in my introduction at 10 o'clock when I started the show, one of the questions I posed was, can South Africa cure itself from GBV? I'm going to take a response from each of you as we conclude. Ella Mangisa, Ilitha Labantu, what would your response be? Can we cure ourselves from GBV?
It's possible, but then it's possible with the right forms of sensitivity, trainings, with trying to change the mindset within our own community, educating our communities, ensuring that we preserve the families that we have, also ensuring that within the family structures, we do report crimes that are happening internally and be honest about it. So it is possible for South Africa to change this kind of narrative that violence against women is a norm. We can fight this scourge as a collective and also bringing our men on board.
Bafana?
Not only can we, Braden, we must. It's on my view, it's an obligation. We cannot afford to have our sisters, our daughters, our mothers facing this vulnerability almost every day of their lives. It's not on. There's a lot of self-reflection for us as men to consider the ways in which we are carrying ourselves and how we are behaving. We need to take full responsibility. And I agree with my sister that, women have been carrying the burden of marching and taking on the bulls by the horns, as it were, but they are not the creators of this problem. We need to see more men coming to the fore, not to justify, not to excuse this wrongful behavior. We need to take responsibility as men, look ourselves in the mirror and say, is this the man that I want to be remembered as in my country? How do I make a contribution such that I can be counted as among those who have advanced the cause for gender equality, respect for women, and treating women with dignity?
Thanks.
And this can be done.
Thank you. Not that we can, we must. In less than a minute, Minister, what are your closing thoughts on this? Can we cure ourselves from GBV?
Well, then it's not optional. It's not if we can. It is, as Bafana has said, it's just not optional. That the men must lead on this thing. Most of the time, then when you speak and you arrest these boys, most of them take this behavior from their own homes sometimes. So this change must start with us as fathers, with all brothers, and say in this house, there shall be no abuse of mother of any girl, and the young boys must grow understanding that it is not done. But also, we all go there and we be genuine about this thing. Don't have us as an activist that want to create our own profile out of these matters. And the time has come of stopping finger pointing and work together. It's a serious, serious matter.
Thank you very much, Police Minister Bheki Cele. Thank you as well to Ella Mangisa from Ilitha Labantu, a Cape Town-based NGO that's been around since 1989, supporting women who suffer from violence meted against them, and also from Bafana Khumalo, Sonke Gender Justice. This is where we conclude this hour, this discussion on GBV. But we'll